So as I said before, my name is Alessia Missuti, and I'm here to facilitate the event on behalf of the organizing committee. And I have the pleasure and honor to officially open the SSE Momentum Conference, so the Social and Solidarity Economy Conference with a focus on social inclusion and, financial inclusion and mechanism and the future of work. Before we start, I wanted to give you some logistical details about the program and make sure that we all get enough information about the start. So I've already give you information about the Wi-Fi network and password. So I hope that is working smoothly for everyone. So these are the password and this is the name of the network. Also, by now, I think everyone should have already got the headphone and the necessary equipment for the simultaneous translation. Even though you speak both English and French, we were recommending you to get it because there will be some intervention in Italian. And as you know by far, now the conference will be provided in English, Italian, and French. So we do recommend you to get the headphone. Okay, thank you, and thank you also for all of you to be here. And in particular, we want to thank you, everyone from the organizing committee and all of you who had a very active role in contributing to making this event real. The last week and last month were very intense and were very active. A lot of you in this room will be playing an active role by contributing to the different sessions that we are planning to have in these 2 days and a half. And also thank you to those of you who accepted the invitation to join the event, to participate to this collaborative discussion that we are going to have in 2 days and a half. We are in the room we are receiving about 40 to 50 participants today, but more will come as of tomorrow, so we will get more people as of tomorrow, so hopefully the group will become richer and bigger. So thank you all for making it real and for contributing actively to the success of the conference. Before we start, and before giving the floor to the institutional remarks, let me just give you some information about why we are all here in Trento. The first objective of the conference is actually about disseminating the research findings of 2 large-scale projects that were carried out and coordinated by the International Labour Organization, and of course carried out by EVA Research Institute and Eurixe, who are of course here in the room. And later in the afternoon we will be providing some keynote. They will be providing some keynote speech to frame further the topics and the substance of the projects. And also these 2 projects were carried out with the support of Government of Luxembourg and Government of France, who are also joining the event and will be contributing to the opening and also to the concluding session of the conference. We will also be, apart from disseminating and getting to know the research findings and the results, we will also aim to foster a collaborative conversation throughout the 2 days and a half that we have together. So we also try to put together a program that provides us the opportunity to foster collaboration and also to compile feedback from you all that joined. And we will try to give it a participatory twist. So be ready to actively play a role, participate, and make sure that your voice is heard, because it will be very important towards the last and final objective of the event, which is about defining some actionable items, some research and policy recommendation for a shared policy and research agenda. So these are the 3 main objectives of the conference, and I hope that by now they are clear for every one of you. So let me just also, I will tell you that if something doesn't work with the translation, please note that at the back of the room we have some technical backup team. So make sure that you can address these problems to the people that are supporting us during the whole conference. Okay, so this was just to frame a little bit the objectives and why we are here. But a special note, a special remarks, I also want to give you the opportunity to receive a welcome note by actually the host of this facility, Mr. Luca Rigotti, who is actually welcoming us in a very... Now you all had the opportunity to see a little bit of the surroundings. We are in the middle of the valleys of Trentino Alto Adige. And later on in the afternoon, in the evening, actually, we will have an opportunity to visit the facility further. So I'll ask you, Mr. Luca Rigotti, to introduce himself and just give us a little introduction about the venue and the history and cultural values.
Thank you very much. But it's better that I speak Italian. Benvenuti.
Welcome to our winery. For us, it is an honor to host a conference on such important topics. And we, as a cooperative, are very much focused on these items. So again, welcome. Our group was set up 115 years ago. Today, we have more than 1,000 members who work on the vineyards in Trentino. Trentino is a mountain area with specific characteristics of the soil which give excellent products. So we produce excellent products, but we have extra costs as compared to other wineries. So these 1,600 members in our cooperative help us have a critical mass. And today we rank 5 at a national level in terms of winery. And also we export 80% of our products. We can export quality in more than 60 countries in the world. So this is the value of our cooperation, of our common good, because we work having in mind the responsibility that we have for the territory where we live. So I don't want to take away any other time, because I know that you have plenty of topics to talk about. I wish you a fruitful meeting, and we're looking forward to receiving you during the visit that you will have later on. Thank you.
Thank you for having us here. And as I said before, as of 6, we will have the opportunity to have a guided tour of the facility, and also the opportunity to have some wine tasting and also ask some questions regarding the cooperative management. Thank you also for the water. So let's now start with the welcome remarks also from the institutional moderators of the conference. So I would like to welcome on stage Roberto Di Meglio, who is coming here on behalf of the ILO and will give us a short introduction speech. Short or maybe not so short?
Less than 3 hours.
And Roberto is a senior specialist on local development, social and solidarity economy of the International Labour Organization based in Geneva. Roberto, over to you.
Thank you. I will take the opportunity, which is not so common, to speak in my language, in Italian.
We're very happy to be here at this conference. So the momentum of social economy, inclusion, and the future of work. As said by the moderator, our objective is to present the results of 2 research works that we carried out together with Eurixe and Hilva. Let me first of all thank the president of the cooperative, Rigotti, Mr. Rigotti, who is hosting us here. And then the local councillor, Mattia Gottardo, local councillor, provincial councillor for local bodies. And then I would like to thank the director of the Ministry of Labour and Social Economy of Luxembourg, Marco Estanqueiro, who is here with us. And Luxembourg is one of the two countries which funded the research projects together with France, and I think that the representative of France will be with us tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. I don't know if the Ministry of Welfare of Latvia has already joined us. Is she here? Yes, the minister is there. Welcome. Ramona Petravica of Latvia. And then I would like to say hello to the director of the Institute of Social Work of Mexico and all the representatives of the task force of the United Nations who are here with us. Well, I would have a list of greetings that I would like to do. A special words of thanks for Professor Carlo Borzaga. We are very grateful for your work, which has been and continues to be a point of reference for all of us who work on social economy and solidarity economy. Professor Borzaga works with the ILO and has been doing so since the first years of 2000, when the International Labour Organization adopted Recommendation 193 on cooperatives. Since then, well, in 2010, we resumed a very important collaboration work with Eurixe and with its Secretary General Gianluca Salvatori, Giancarlo Bodini, the director, and other members of the Eurixe team who gave a very important contribution to the activities of ILO in the area of capacity buildings, in particular in the area of academia. And then I would like to congratulate Eurixe once again, which has been repeatedly mentioned by the General Secretary of the United Nations in the latest session of the General Assembly of the United Nations, in particular with reference to two publications on cooperatives. And I've not completed the list of greetings. I would like to greet also Hiva Benedict Fontaneau, who is here with us, who has led the group on writing workshops together with Alejandro Morales, a professor based in Brazil at the University of Araraquara. And then I would like to greet and welcome all the scholars and experts coming from the various countries which have been the focus of this research: Argentina, Brazil, Canada, Korea, Colombia, France, Luxembourg, Ecuador, Philippines, Morocco, Senegal, Belgium, and Italy. So welcome, everybody. Well, the moderator already described the main objectives of this conference: disseminate, define, and promote a debate, to disseminate knowledge, define future activities, And the research work made by ILO and EURIXE wants to show that social enterprise and social economy can contribute to the future of work. And the HIVA project is much more focused on how social and solidarity economy can provide solutions in the current situation. Well, there are many common points and many common elements. We asked the two donor countries to have a single conference in a third country, that is Italy. And for us, it was a reason for satisfaction that they accepted this proposal. And this is a good example of European synergy. This year, IOLA celebrates its 100th anniversary, but this cooperative comes first, is much older. The president said 119 years, if I remember well. IOLA was set up in 1919 after the First World War, with a lot of problems with the labor market, without rules, and that was the origin of ILO. This year, in the framework of the celebrations, IOLA launched several initiatives, including one about the future of work, of labor. A high-level commission was set up. And after 2 years of work, well, the commission was set up in 2017, and after 2 years of work, a report was published in January this year, and there are copies available in different languages if you want. And that report says something important. It says that we need a new agenda, a new social contract, and a new agenda focused on the person, on the human being.
Diciamo che
Well, these research works that we're going to discuss during this conference wants to be a contribution to this type of debate. Also, with a view to a possible future initiative by ILO, which was adopted by 182 countries of ILO. That was a declaration where there is a specific mention of social and solidarity economy. And I will read 3 sentences. The declaration states that considering the deep transformation of the labor market and its approach to the future of work, which should be focused on people, IOLA should focus its efforts in order to support solidarity and social economy with a view to generating dignified labor and better standards of living for everybody. Well, for us who work at ILO, well, this is a very important reason to continue to work along this path. During the last board, we discussed about solidarity and social economy, and we also consider the possibility of introducing this topic into the next international conference. But that was not the case. That was not possible. But what's important is that we discussed about the issue, and in the next board in March next year, we will probably discuss about this topic. Well, I don't want to bore you with figures and statistics, but figures in the area of social and solidarity economy are growing. They are very significant, and they symbolize the interest of policymakers, of decision makers for this area. We, as an international organization, actually are aware of that because of the many requests coming from member states that ask us to work on this topic by means of technical assistance, technical partnership and cooperation, by means of capacity building projects, etc. We, as an international organization, want to promote solidarity and social economy, of which this cooperative is a very good example. In 2016, we organized an academy in Mexico with the National Institute of Social Economy, financed by the Mexican government. And on that occasion, they asked us to invite the Trentino wine cooperatives, because they wanted to show an example of a competitive and successful cooperative. So we believe that cooperatives, apart from being inclusive and focused on the environment, can also be competitive. ILO continues to do things at an international level, and indeed in a few days we will have a meeting at the United Nations with the current president of this work group, who is an officer of ILO. And among the objectives of this group, there is also that of obtaining a resolution by the United Nations in favor of solidarity and social economy. So I'd like to underline that the title of the conference, the momentum of the social and solidarity economy, is not casual, it's not random, because indeed we are facing a period where this type of economy is under the lens for various reasons. And I think that we should take advantage of this and be able to explain and convince people that we can actually offer a useful instrument for more inclusive and sustainable policies with a view to having a better future. And I think that this type of conference can be an occasion to contribute to that.
On closing, let me say something about Trento and the reason why we're here. Especially for the benefit of our international guests, let me say that Trento, and then the local minister will take the floor, but Trento may boast a past heritage of importance for the association. So there are incredible numbers that were generated by a collective history, closely connected to the need of isolated communities that found in associations a flywheel to promote economic development and cultural development alike. Let me just quote a couple of figures, and these are EURIXA data. The added value of cooperation in Trentino, 2.35 billion euro. 13.6% of the GDP of the province of Trento, which is twice as much, if I remember correctly, of the national average of the added value of cooperation at the national level. As many as 43,000 employees in the area, with an increase over the past 5-year time of over 26%. So Trentino is an area that is strongly marked by cooperation. Associations play an important role here, and I'm thinking about another area that is characterized by as many associations, i.e. Quebec. I don't see our friend Yvonne. There he is. There he is, yes. And I know that in Quebec you also have a lot of associations and cooperatives, so that is as important as in this area. So let me close now my very short introductory remarks. I hope that I haven't taken too much time away from you, so I wish the proceedings every success. I strongly invite you to visit this very interesting region. This region may boast a lot of treasures. Some of them are hidden, more hidden than others, but this is the most interesting area for sure. So thank you very much
for having given us this outline and also for having opened on behalf of the ILO. And now it's my turn to, it's the turn to ask Mr. Marco Estanqueiro to come on stage and also provide a welcome remark on behalf of the Luxembourg government. Marco Estanqueiro is the head of department for the social and solidarity economy at the Ministry of Labour, Employment and Social and Solidarity Economy. So please, over to you.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, contrairement à Robert, et je vais essayer aussi d'être très bref parce que
I shall speak English. I'll try and be very fast because I understand that we are running late. So I'm going to be as short as possible. So good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Now, Mrs. Minister, Director, ladies and gentlemen, General Directors, I'd like to congratulate on seeing so many of you here, and I understand you come from different areas. This bears witness to the fact that the social and solidarity economy is an important subject. I am a delegate of the state government. I represent the social and the solidarity economy for the Luxembourg government, and I'd like to make a few remarks on this event. A few years ago, this type of economy has been identified as something opposing social and economic crisis, and today this can become a true hinge point. The social and solidarity economy is a mark of durable economy and is a bet on long-term and not short-term speculation, which is obviously the opposite of solidarity. The objective of this kind of economy is producing quality employment to survive with dignity thanks to their job. Globalization certainly is a fact, and yet there are social differences and climate change that are facts as well. So the economic and solidarity economy are a tool to counter these major challenges. SSE is a tool to achieve the objectives as set in Objectives 2030. We have to find a balance between employment and preservation of natural balances, of environmental balances. So we have to strike a balance between technical development and social development. SSE is a model, can be used as a model to develop the social responsibility and environmental responsibility. We're gathered here together to find a new economic model that may combine and find a negotiation between the requirements of citizen entrepreneurs in the consideration of the common goods. SSE is certainly not an isolated entity, it is a world movement. Hence, we should create the adequate conditions for this system to flourish. Access to financing is strategic, and we believe that this is indeed a key element that may allow us to give new thrust to this new entrepreneurial form that may create more employment, better employment, and more sustainable employment. the Luxembourg government decided to support the International Labour Organization in this study project on the mechanisms of SSE. We've studied the mechanisms of 8 countries in different continents, trying to provide with political recommendations to get to solutions to common problems for the enterprises and companies of the SSE. This took 3 different steps. First of all, the researchers defined the sources and mechanism for funding so as to see whether they could be used for different purposes, for different steps of development. The SSE systems developed, and we're trying to understand what financing tools can be used on a daily basis. We then drafted a comparative analysis analyzing the different cases as obtained in different countries. There are relevant differences worldwide when it comes to the structure and functioning of SSE. The objectives are all the same, though. The objectives are meeting human requirements in the communities where these companies are located. The social and solidarity economy includes a number of players with different financing requirements and with different objectives in the different cycles of life. The traditional funding is not necessarily compatible with the objective of the social and solidarity economy. Social and SSEOs may draw from different capital sources that may not be accessible for other companies, such as charities and private capitals alike. These sources of financing cannot meet the requirements of all the SSEOs. This is why we should speculate on a model for a hybrid financing that could be made available not by traditional financial system. So we have to find a whole set of reimbursable and non-reimbursable financial tools coming from different sources. The study has pointed out to the fact that certain guidelines should be followed, or certain directions, in that there's not one single product that fits all the requirements for financing of the social and economic solidarity economy. We should try and promote the internal capitalization of companies, coming up with solutions to do away with the loss of financing that would come from the distribution of profits. We have to have tools to facilitate these companies having access to funding. Ecosystems should be reinforced by the principles and co-decision mechanisms. Specific policies should be launched for the support of social and solidarity economy. Administrative solutions should be opted for these organizations. So we should collate statistics to best assess the requirements of SSE. Solutions have to benchmark internationally, so have to come up with best practices. The financial mechanisms should have to do with the ecosystem as such for these organizations. I said that right from the beginning that I meant to be short, so there's nothing else for me to add, because I believe that we're going to see in greater detail the subject during the 3 days ahead of us. The conference is based on a participatory approach, so we have to contribute to debate and to come up with suggestions, recommendations, and to come to shared conclusions so as to define the forthcoming lines of action. Thank you very much to you all.
Thank you for having contributed to this opening session and given us these welcome remarks. There is also a welcome remark by Mr. Christophe Itier, High Commissioner for the Social and Solidarity Economy and Social Innovation with the Minister of State, Minister for the Ecological and Solidarity Transition in France. And this message will be brought to us by Valérie Breda, Senior Technical Officer at the ILO, as Mr. Christophe couldn't join us today for the opening. So, Valérie, thank you.
It feels a little bit awkward to speak on behalf of Mr. Itier, but maybe you close your eyes for 1 second and you have the feeling, have the beard and the glasses. Anyway, so I will speak in French. Chers participants,
dear participants of the Mixed Commission, France and OEL was held on September 10th, 2019 and led to the adoption of the budget for the main action for cooperation that had been carried out by France together with the ILO in the framework of the Partnership Agreement 2015-2019. This led to the decision to carry forward this cooperation between the Secretariat and the French government between 2024 and 2024. That has to be centered on a reduced number of directions, also acting in the framework of G7 with the French presidency that focused on the subject of the fight against inequalities. Please let me remind you that France acts in the framework of Agenda 2030 for the implementation of Sustainable Development Goals. The priorities as defended by France abroad should also consider the crossovers challenges linked to the world procurement lines, especially when it comes to the company responsibility of businesses. We should consider that there are needs that are to be considered for the enterprises, be the multinationals, micro enterprises, small to medium-sized enterprises, or medium enterprises, and also of organizations belonging to the world of the social solidarity economy. There are 4 priorities. First and foremost, equality between men and women in the framework of the fight against the violence against women in the at work. This has been declared by our President of the Republic as a main objective of our presidency. At national level, France is engaged for real equality in the professional world, and tangible measures have been adopted that are also innovative and far-reaching, with the objective to reduce the difference in salary and in career opportunity. At international level, France has set the equality between men and women as a top priority of its presidency of G7, and also within the ILO. France is indeed a historical partnership of the International Labour Organization in the fight against child labour and forced labour. France was one of the first country in adopting the provisional protocol for the Convention 29 on forced labour. The French delegation is part of a partnership involving many countries, partners, and NGOs, with one objective in mind: that to fulfill the Sustainable Development Goals 8.7 of the United Nations, with the main objective of being the fight against child labour and forced labour, contemporary forms of slavery, and human being trafficking. the alliance should go on obtaining tangible results, because the main objective for us is to do away with child labor altogether. Within the presidency of G7, the French launched an appeal so that all countries develop a social protection by 2030, based on the principle as implemented in the recommendations adopted by ILO in 2012. France supports ever since and for many years all the projects of ILO when it comes to social protection. There's a FAR program on social protection in the initiative launched together with the World Bank, SPIAC-B. France is also part of the initiative Universal Social Protection, USB 2030, aimed at developing worldwide all actions to reduce poverty and income inequalities to get to the objectives of Agenda 2030. This partnership between France and the ILO is going to be fully implemented to develop the social dimension of the ecological transition. The shift to a decarbonized economy represents an opportunity, but it is also a challenge to do away with all polluting activities. This transition will only be possible if inequalities are reduced. In 2016, the ILO set for itself guiding principles for right transitions towards economies and businesses that are environmental friendly. ILO is going to be the best suited partner to support this change toward a greener economy. In this framework, France wishes to play a major role in carrying out a number of initiatives. France is going to involve all the players at the environmental level so as to act at international level. The Pact for Impact is a World Alliance for the Social and Inclusive Economy. Then there's the Pact for the Growth of Social and Solidarity Economy that translates a will, as expressed by the French government, to strengthen the potential for the enterprises of the social and solidarity organizations. There's also a coalition of private and public enterprises, 10% to change all, whose objective is that of normalizing the practices of enterprises. The skills as developed by the ILO should be aimed at the development of these four priorities of this partnership agreement between France and the International Secretariat of the ILO for the time between 2020 and 2024, especially when it comes to the social and solidarity dimension of the environmental transition. Having said as much, I wish the proceedings every success, and I am eager to listen to your conclusions of this 3 days conference, so as to pass them on to my colleagues at the ILO. Thank you.
Message from Mr. Christophe Ithier. And now the last, but not less important, the concluding remark from the Trento province. On behalf of the Trento province, we have Mr. Mattia Gottardi, cabinet member. So, please, over to you.
Buon pomeriggio a tutti.
Good afternoon. I will speak Italian. It's an honor to convey to you the greetings of the provincial government. I'd like to thank the government delegations, and I'd like to thank also the organizers of this very important international event. And then I would like to thank the researchers and the experts who will focus on such important topics. I think that Trentino and Trento in particular are the right place, a favorable place for this type of discussions. And I say so because our territory has positive economic data as compared to the European situation, and it ranks first in all the classifications about social economic factors. For example, recently Trento has been ranked first in terms of quality of life in Italy. Trento has been able to create its wealth, its socio-economic wealth, starting from very heavy needs. At the beginning of last century, Trentino was one of the poorest regions in Italy. It was a region living on subsistence agriculture, and who had a lot of migration. And there are Trentino communities practically everywhere in the world, and these emigrants are still very much connected with their land of origin. Well, Trentino was also very much isolated because many valleys are geographically isolated, or were geographically isolated, because they are mountain territories and the weather is not always favorable. These are very high lands. And like many other highlands, they lived on agriculture, they lived on subsistence agriculture. And it was thanks to all these situations that the seed of cooperation could actually thrive. Well, the data earlier provided to you highlight that here in the region of Trentino, the cooperative system has a preeminent place in terms of number of practitioners and also turnover. And this is linked to the possibility of self-rule. Trento perhaps is famous for hosting the first Vatican Council. And it was also the place of other forms of self-government, for example, the government of the Prince Bishop that was many centuries ago. Now, today, we still have a very high level of independence, of self-rule. We have this provincial government, independent provincial government, and this is something unique in Italy, together with Bolzano, and we have a great competitive advantage, which makes it possible to see and to study the example of the province of Trento, also in terms of the social and solidarity economy. The supply chain is short. We have primer legislative prerogatives. And in terms of size, in terms of place, and in terms of figures, we represent 1% of GDP, 1% of the territory, and 1% of the population in Italy. And we can be easily studied because any legislative act, any intervention has immediate repercussions on the community, which is often not the case when the territory is larger than ours. And then there is another competitive advantage, a big competitive advantage, which we sometimes underestimate, because we all know each other by name. Just the fact that we are 1% of everything facilitates us in terms of relations and in terms also of the possibility of solving people's needs and requirements. So thank you so much on behalf of the Autonomous Province of Trento for choosing our region to discuss about these very important topics. We will offer you all possible support also for further meetings that you may have, and I wish you a fruitful meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. So I thank you, Mr. Mattia Gottardi, and also all the other speakers who managed to set the scene and the context for the conference, so that we are well aware about the opportunities and the challenges as well ahead for the next 2 days and a half, and also further. So before we move on to the keynote speakers, let me just give you a few details about the program and how we are going to go deeper into the different thematics of the conference. By now, you should all have received a folder with all the information regarding the program, the bio of the speakers, and the details about the presentation. Just let me highlight that the rationale behind the agenda. So the program is articulated around the 3 main themes, which are highlighted on the screen. The first one is the SSE Momentum, so it gives also the name to the conference, and it's about key drivers and trends. While the second one will be this SSE and the future of work, so at the core of decent work agenda. And finally, also supporting the SSE and the role of financial resources. So these 3 main themes are articulated throughout the program, and will provide us to report back the results and the findings of the 2 projects in a holistic way. On the other hand, here you see a snapshot of how the program looked like from the timetable point of view. Today, in the plenary session, we will have we had the opportunity to have the welcome remarks, and also to know better who is who in the room, and also to receive the keynote address also from Carlo Borzaga on behalf of Eurixe, and Benedict Fontanot on behalf of IVA. But on the other end, in the next 2 days, you will see that the program is slightly different. We will have the opportunity to come back to this room, Sala del Cavò, where we are going to have some plenary sessions. The plenary session will be an opportunity to dig deeper in the state of the art of research. There will be an opportunity for speakers and experts to provide some key highlights, and they will be moderated and also enriched by some discussants. So being in this room, the plenary session will be translated, so will be provided to you in 3 languages. Therefore, you will need the headphone and the equipment that you have today. Following the plenary session, so there will be a plenary session in the morning and a plenary session in the afternoon, and the length will be of about 1 hour and a half. We will make sure that time management will be respected. Following the plenary session, we will have some time for what we call parallel sessions. So if you have already participated to some academies, as Roberto was stating in his welcome remark, this is the format we are used to. So parallel session will be an opportunity for digging deeper into the implications towards the formulation of recommendations for policy and research. And being parallel session, they will be happening in 3 different parallel rooms. One parallel will be happening here in Sala del Cavò. Another parallel session will be in Sala Video, which is just next to the registration desk where you all got your information today. And then we will have also an opportunity to go on the first floor to Sala Degustazione, where we will not have wine tasting, but we will have some, we will taste some presentations. So we will be having the opportunity to get some presentation and case studies. So this is how the program is articulated. And we decided to have parallel sessions so that we allow the possibility to have more rich intervention and also richer discussions and compilation of feedback towards the last day. On the last day, if you see in the afternoon on Wednesday, after lunch, there will be a group work session. This means that we will be focusing on really digging deeper on what we have gone through, all the presentation and all the work we have been exposed to. But at the same time, we will be involved in discussing, validating, and integrating some draft recommendations and make sure that we have propositions for the shared agenda towards policy and research recommendation. These recommendations are very important because will be also provided as a basis for the high-level panel that will be happening as a last session on Wednesday. So also in the afternoon on Wednesday, we will have again a plenary session. There will be high-level panel anticipated by the presentation of these recommendations. So this is how we are going to work throughout the 2 days and a half. Just one clarification regarding the parallel session. The sessions that will be happening in the other two rooms will be either in English or in French, and therefore that's why we asked for language capacity and language preference when you had to sign up for the event. So by now you should also have expressed an interest towards the session that you would like to attend. If you still have no clarity about where to go as of tomorrow, make sure that you refer to the registration desk so that you will get some guidance about where to go, so that we provide some balance in the participation of all the sessions. I hope this is all clear, and we can also move on to the fact that there is also an online page that it's supporting the event. You should have received some information via email before joining the event in Trento. And so there is a website, there is an online page where some materials are provided, and also all the presentations will be uploaded in the coming days. And there is also a channel for keeping in touch, a website forum where you were asked to exchange some initial expectation towards the event. On this purpose, I want to ask Fernando Baptista to join me on stage so that you can just give us some indications about the website and also the platform in general. So if you join me here, I will just switch from the presentation to the website.
Perfect. Can I, after I use the mouse here, show them?
Sure.
Hello, so my name is Fernando Baptista, and I have been working for ILO now for more than 8 years, specifically on SSC, so I guess I know already most of you. And a lot of what I do has to do with networking, so, and we have been using the internet a lot for that. So what I'm going to show you is a little bit what we have been doing. I'm going to show you the page that we have specifically for the SSC Momentum Conference. But also, this is part of a bigger platform we have. We call it the SSC Collective Brain. So I'm going to take you through this, those spaces quickly and show you what you can access and the materials and everything we have online. So basically here, this is the page we have created for the conference. And here in this page, here in this page, you're going to find the basic information about, oh, let me update this because there is a new thing here. Oops. Yeah, so now we have here basic information about the conference, And we have the conference is being streamed live, so people who are not here are able to access. And this is going to happen for the whole conference. So if you want to invite people like colleagues and friends to follow the conference in real time, you can do it. Yeah, I see myself here. and here basically you have the program, the publications that are being launched. We have a discussion forum. I'm going to show you a little bit further down. We have channels for social media. We have folders for the presentation. So here on this page, you are going to find all resources related to this conference. So let's go a little bit down. Here we have the discussion forum for the conference. So some people, they have already posted and they have introduced themselves. So this forum can be a means for you after, if you want to keep in touch and to make comments and all that, you can post, you can comment on each other's posts. So it's basically a virtual space for discussions. So this is basically the conference page. And here in the conference page, we're going to find a link. You're going to find a link for the SSC Collective Brain. Oops. Yeah. So this is the SSC Collective Brain. And here we have the SSC Collective Brain. It was launched in 2011. And after that, it became a history of everything that ILO has done in the field of SSC. So here we're going to find a library, a huge library of all events, including all SSC academies, and you are going to find a lot of videos. You are going to find interviews, you are going to find videos of presentations, you are going to find a library of documents that has more than 1,000 documents in several languages. So basically, on the one hand here, you have the history of everything that ILO has been doing on the field of SSC for the past at least 8 years. So all digitalized. So it's a huge body of materials that you can access. It's available for you to access. Yeah, so if we go down a little bit here, you're going to see a timeline of news. You are going to see highlights. You're going to see the library. You are going to see a link for a channels of videos. So on the one hand, we have all those materials available. On the other hand, we also have been exploring social media channels so that people who participate in those events, academies, courses, conferences, all that they can keep in touch after the event. So one thing that we have realized is that normally people, they come together, they stay together for like 1 week or 3 days, 1 week, but after that they go back to their countries and there isn't much communication among them. So the idea was to use social media so that they could keep sharing what they're doing with each other in a way that like they could easily identify common projects and basically be in touch in between those events. So like you know that you keep meeting each other from time to time, but the idea was to also to use the internet to increase the interaction in between the events. So we have created many spaces. We have discussion forums here that are linked to the events, but we have also the social media channels, and we have particularly 2 that are very active. We have a Facebook group for we call it ILO SSC Academy, and you can access through this button here in the Collective Brain. And we have a similar group in LinkedIn. So I also would like to encourage you to join those groups because it can be a way of publicizing what you are doing, to publish your research and your activities, so that we have today about 2,500 people that became part of this virtual community. So, so it's interesting to share what you are doing so that they can also access and to be aware of what you are doing. Yeah, so I guess there is a lot to show here. It's a complex platform, but I think I was able to convey the main message. So I'm going to be here for the whole conference. If you have doubts about how to use the platform, about how to access materials, all that, please just come to me, and I can show you more in details. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fernando. Thank you. So Fernando is the person to ask about the website and all the information that is available there, or even the social media. And talking about social media, I just want to take the opportunity to introduce a tool that we may use throughout the conference, just to get some more interaction through the plenaries, but also compile your questions and feedback so that we can also leverage on those comments even beyond the conference. And also, since Fernando was telling us that the conference is in streaming, also giving the opportunity eventually to those of you who are not physically here to contribute to the plenary discussion that we will be having throughout these 2 days and a half. So in order to do that, I will just switch to another platform. And I'm going to ask you if you have your mobile phone in the room. Do you have your mobile phone? How many mobile phones do you have? One? That's enough. Okay. I'm going to ask you to take out your mobile phone. By now, you should all be connected to the internet. You were confirming me that it was working smoothly. So what I'm going to ask you, if you can just take your mobile and use the web browser on your mobile phone to connect to this website that is called slido.com. So just easy, you don't need any application, you just need internet connection, and connect to the website. And you will be required to enter an event code, which is V901, as you can see it on the screen. So just a few seconds for you to join Slido and enter the event code. And you will see that there is a very easy question to answer. This is just a question for practice, and see if you can easily use the application. By now, I see that we have already 3 people that managed to submit an answer. The question is about your professional background, and you have a few options to choose among. Either you are a UN agency representative, or a researcher, a policymaker, or a practitioner. So you have 4 options. What does make more sense for you? Just choose an option and submit your answer. So we have about 13 people who managed to vote, and this gives us a snapshot of who is in the room and what type of different perspective will be taken into consideration throughout the discussion. So I see people are voting, the votes are increasing. So I'm relieved that technology is working, Wi-Fi is with us today. Okay, good. Even though we have not yet had access to the full participants list, we can easily see that researchers are definitely the majority by now. But then we have also a good representation from UN agency representatives. I see numbers are increasing and decreasing by the time I'm speaking. And then also an average number of practitioners and policymakers. So that's good. So this was just a practice question so that I wanted you to familiarize with the tool. Actually, I had a more important question to ask now, which is not about the organization you work for, but it's more about the expectation you have towards the conference. So the first thing I would like to ask you, by now you have already been hearing a lot of presentations and remarks. At this moment, I would like to ask you if you can try to talk to the person that is sitting either on the right or on the left, or even at your back if you don't have someone sitting on your side, and just try to discuss about the number one expectation you have towards the conference. So I give you 1 minute to find a partner and discuss your expectation. All right. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt this first round of conversation. I see that even though different languages are represented in the room, you found a way to communicate, either in English, in French, or in Italian. I'm going to please ask you if you can just, if you can have your attention again. All right. You will have 1 second moment to share with your partner. The second question I would like to ask you now, since what's happening on the screen? Okay, now we have it again. Okay, so the second question I would like to ask you, you had the opportunity to share expectations toward the conference, and you had elaborated on this expectation. My question, the challenge I'm going to give you now is to try to elaborate your expectation in only one word. Would you be able, with the person you discussed to submit one word, either in English, in Italian, or in French? Always through Slido, always through the same system. Just one word. So you see that now we are receiving the feedback from you, and the feedback is shaping in form of a word cloud. We have 10 people, 15 answers. So we are kind of having a snapshot of what is the collective expectation towards the conference, but also the collective language. I see that most of the words are coming in English. So networking is quite relevant for the conference, but also exchange, share, impact, and learn. Okay. So in terms of networking, we will make sure that actually the sessions that are planned for the next 2 days are going to give you enough time to exchange, to learn from others, and to share your experience and expertise. What about convince? Who wrote convince? Is there anyone? Benedict, would you like to further elaborate on this?
Je vais parler en français.
I'm going to speak French. I have the feeling that we're now here in a room and most of the delegates are convinced of the potentials of SSE. Yet they are I'm constantly faced with people who are extremely skeptic vis-à-vis the potential of the social and solidarity economy. So I believe that it is an important time for us to convince. Indeed, we have to network, to be better focused in wording, so as to be persuasive. Our objective is going to be reached at length. We have to persuade and convince people about the potentials of SSE. Quindi, a parte il networking e l'apprendimento, ci rendiamo conto che molti stanno anche parlando dell'impact, cioè lasciare il segno. C'è qualcuno che vuole fare un commento? Chi è che ha detto chi è che ha scritto questa parola? Ti puoi presentare per piacere e dire perché? I'm going to speak French myself. My name is Basil. I'm part of the team who worked on this subject at national and international levels. Well, I believe that we want to have an impact, that I believe that this conference should have a social impact on the delegates. So we have to want these ideas to have an impact. And I believe that we should leave this room with positive impact to be transferred also to the rest of the people.
Of the room that is stressing the fact that networking is also very important, and actually I think it's the number one reason also why we are all gathering here for a face-to-face event. I would like to just set aside the technology for a moment, even though we will be mentioning this technology even later and also tomorrow morning for the plenaries. And what I would like you to do now is just to reflect not only on expectations, but also on your experience and your expertise. You are all experts, you all come from different backgrounds, and you all, I think, actively contributed to the success of this conference. So the question I have for you now, sorry. The question I have for you now is about what do you bring to the conference? So what is the comparative advantage of you being here, part of this event, for the next 2 days and a half? And I would say that I want to set aside technology for a moment, and I want to think about some offline networking. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to reflect on your comparative advantage. What do you bring to the conference? What is your experience and expertise? From which angle do you think that you're going to be able to contribute to this conference? And then we will allow about 10 minutes to build new connections. I know that probably most of you already know each other and you have been already part of same teams or maybe participated to some events. But as we saw before, we are coming from different backgrounds. So we have researchers, we have policymakers, we have some UN workers representatives. So the idea will be here to really connect with someone in a different function. So for example, if you are a policymaker, to meet, for example, with a researcher or with a practitioner or with a UN worker representative. Same, if you are a researcher, try to find someone that you have not had the opportunity to talk a lot since now, and try to share your comparative advantage. So is the question clear? So what is your comparative advantage? What do you bring to the conference? It's not about expectation, but it's about what you can share. So reflect on this question, and I'm going to give you 10 minutes to stand up, identify someone in the room you don't know yet. Maybe you saw before at lunch but didn't have the opportunity to talk much. And use your post-it or card as a conversation sparker in case you want to write down. But I think we can easily also share without writing down this idea, and share with one person and move on. Okay? So I'm going to give you 10 minutes and put some music. ask you if you could.
No, it's okay.
It's okay.
No, feel free.
Okay. So we have 30 seconds to go. Okay, time's up. So we should gently move back to our chairs. Sorry to interrupt the conversations. I'm going to ask you if you... Okay. I'm going to ask you if we can gently move back to our chairs. Thank you. So let me ask you if you can gently go back to our chairs. So I see that I see you managed to meet at least 3 people. I hope that at least number one expectation about networking is partially met, and that we started with the right foot, we'll say in Italian. I hope also this gives you an opportunity to meet someone that you wanted to talk to. You didn't have time yet because at lunchtime we were rushing. I saw people were exchanging some business cards. Did you manage to meet at least 3 people? How many of you, for example, did you manage to meet someone that was new to you? Anyone that managed to meet someone new? 3 people? Is there anything that you would like to share that stood out from the conversation? Something that, that you would like to share with us?
I think that most important is that we know each other because we're part of an ecosystem. And we need to know well each part so we can be stronger by knowing each other, who we can connect with for future work and future networking and learning.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else who managed to meet more than 3-4 people? Okay. No, then I think 10 minutes was not good, but we will have time during the aperitivo, and then we will have also time during dinner to continue this networking conversation. Okay, so I hope we are all set. I hope this also gave you some energy, and I think now we are ready to start the last session of today. Last session, but not for this reason less important, because it's going to give us the good ingredients about why we are here, and also frame the objectives and the challenges, opportunities about the 2 research projects that were carried out. So I want to welcome on stage Valérie Breda, that is going to moderate the next session and introduce us to the 2 keynote speakers that will be with us for the last hour. So Valérie, over to you.
Okay. Good afternoon. So now you see me in my real capacity. So yes, so I am Valérie Breda. I work for the ILO in Geneva in the social finance program. So this is my real capacity. You don't need to close your eyes. This is me. So I would like to invite actually our 2 keynote speakers, Professor Carlo Borzaga, and Bénédicte Fontenot. So please, you can take a chair with us. So I'm very pleased to have you both on stage, two prominent experts in the field of the social and solidarity economy. And I'm very pleased that you are both actually with us for this session that will frame a little bit further the topics of this conference. So Professor Carlo Borzaga is an economist, a professor of economic policy at the University of Trento. I know that you have also held different positions at the university for many years, so been teaching for nearly 20 years now. Also chairing a master on management of social enterprises. As was said before, you are now chairing EURICSE, this European Research Institute on Cooperative and Social Enterprises, that is co-organizing this event. You're a founding member of the network EMES, which stands for Emergence of Social Enterprises in Europe. You are, of course, a member of the scientific committee of several journals. You have collaborated over the many years with Italian national institutions such as the Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Family and Social Solidarity, and also international organizations like institutions like the European Union, like OECD or the ILO, as Roberto said, that you have been collaborating with us for the past 20 years, actually. So this is very, very impressive. You have also worked with us on a number of reports. So I'm very pleased to welcome you. I will also introduce Bénédicte now. And so Bénédicte Fontenot works as a researcher at HIVA, the Research Institute of the Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium, doing a lot of research on social protection, on social and solidarity economy, also some research on the informal economy and how we can organize informal economy workers, with a focus also on how trade unions actually are working toward organizing workers in the informal economy. Bénédicte, she has written over or contributed to over 50 publications over the years on different topics. So we have a very impressive panel this afternoon. I would like to invite Professor Carlo Borzaga to come and give us your keynote address, please.
Okay. Good evening, buonasera. I'm not sure what language is better to use, because I have the slides in English. I should speak Italian, but I have to summarize the slide, so I'll try in Italian. I hope not to make too much confusion. Okay.
Well, it's pretty clear to everybody that there is a growing and rapidly growing interest for SSEs. And there are examples of this interest, not only at a political level,
How does it work? The presentation here. Questo, no?
Se vuole proporre con quello, metto all'inizio.
Okay.
Funziona? No, quello qua.
Thank you. Riprendo. Allora, c'è
As I was saying, there is a growing interest for SSEs, and this is pretty apparent, but this is not a real discovery, but it is a rediscovery of the existence and importance of these enterprises. Some of the reasons for this rediscovery are based on empirical evidence, because SSEs, as demonstrated by data, represent a wide spectrum of production and labor in many countries. These enterprises have grown in number and importance, both in traditional sectors, but also in new sectors. For example, the area of social services in many countries, where they were missing after some years ago. And they reacted to crisis much better than capital-based enterprises. And this not relate only to labor cooperatives, but to all social enterprises which reacted better to the crisis. And they have shown to be able to react to needs. There are also other reasons, let's say more general reasons, perhaps moral reasons for this. There is a growing interest for forms of enterprises based on a mechanism of cooperation. This is something which is emerging also in many studies. There is a strong criticism, for example, towards the excessive use of economic incentives, and people also in economic activities are more focused on cooperation, and there are values that wants to be experienced also in this type of economy. And there is a growing interest for commons, for example, which identify a whole series of goods and services which are reproducible only on a community basis. So these perhaps are reasons which are not so easy to represent in statistical ways, but they are equally important. Well, I leave aside the empirical evidence with the exception of the last 5. Well, most of the research works about worker satisfactions have demonstrated that these companies show higher levels of worker satisfactions as compared to conventional enterprises and also public entities. Well, in order to understand this growing interest for SSEs, I think that we should look at 2 points in particular. One is the crisis of traditional social and economic models. So the neoliberalistic model is undergoing a big crisis. Let's take the example of the US. But also, if there is crisis and if there is this problem of debts, this growth cannot, however, do without inequalities, because as Stiglitz said, inequalities may stop growth. And then we also need to look at the specific characteristics of these enterprises. Well, I have subdivided these characteristics into 4 categories. The first is the aim. The aim of social enterprises is the willingness to react to a need, the need of people and the need of communities. So this is the difference. Capital-based companies use needs to remunerate investors, while social enterprises do business in order to respond to needs. So also the debate on profit and not-for-profit enterprises has no meaning. And then second, Another characteristic has to do with ownership and governance. In the case of social enterprises, the ownership rights, the control rights are allocated on a personal basis, the fact of being members as people and not based on actions, on shares, sorry. So hence the democratic nature of these companies. They are not democratic per se, but they are democratic because they are made by people. And there is no other way to govern these companies. And then the third characteristic is that they use methods for the distribution of costs and benefits which are based on cooperative agreements. And I think that these are more cooperative criteria. So what one can take or give to a company, to a social enterprise, depends on a cooperative agreement, as mentioned by the researchers when they speak about commons. So this model is not based on an agreement between self-interested actors. And then the other characteristic has to do with constraints which are either imposed by law, as in the case of Italy, or they are self-assumed. For example, the obligation to allocate part of the profits to reserve, and the profit distribution constraints, and above all, the asset lock, which, however, is not common to all social enterprises in all countries. So this is a constraint on asset. For example, it's not enough to forbid the distribution of profits, but also the assets cannot be distributed. And this is one of the differences, the main differences between capital-based companies and social enterprises. So it's not so much a legal form, a legal model, but it is the fact of managing economic transactions in a different way. So it's different from what happens in the market. So these are organizations which do not respond to orders, but they are the result of the free will of citizens. Hence, a series of advantages that are well known, but also some limitations. These are the advantages: the anti-cyclical nature and the resilience to crisis. And there is a very simple reason for that. As these are companies which are set up to provide services to members, they are anti-cyclical by nature. They will grow less when the other companies grow, but they will resist to crisis better. So even if there is a crisis, they resist, while capital-based companies tend to use public policies in an opportunistic way in order to realign profits by layoffs or by other methods. And then also consumer cooperatives in Italy have increased employment during the crisis. And then the second advantage is that they can manage transactions on trust-based relationships, and so they can bank on intrinsic motivations and on pro-social motivations. And here I would like to recall the book which has been shortly published, The Good Economy, by the two Nobel Prize winners, where they say that economic incentives do not work anymore, and I think that our community should reflect upon this, because this is something that could be used also in terms of public debates. And then there is a fair distribution of the value produced. And the only data that I am showing you are these. Please look at the last three values. Here you see the share of added value, so cooperatives and other enterprises. The second column is attributed to labor, depending on the sector. Well, in the area of education, there is a 0.9%, so 90% of the value, of the added value produced, goes into labor. In the other enterprises, it is 0.5. That is just more than half. In the area of health and welfare, 0.92 as compared to 0.31, so 1/3 of capital-based companies. So that means that there are two business models which are completely different. One is based on the supply of services. In this case, these are cooperatives. And in the case of capital-based companies, it is just a way to help third parties have services. And this applies to all services. You see cooperatives allocate to labor a higher share. Another important sector is professional activities, 0.85 as compared to 0.36. Other advantages. Well, these organizations, thanks to their characteristics, can use community resources and can work in low profitability sectors. That is, those sectors where capital-based companies would never go because they have no interest. And then they can use resources which are not made available to other companies because the other companies have other interests, and they cannot attract people who can work on a voluntary basis. And then another characteristic is that they can facilitate the transition from informal economy to formal economy, because they are better able to identify needs and find the most appropriate responses. Well, if we look at the recent evolution of social cooperation, this is exactly the case. It's groups of people who have specific needs, and they invent the responses to those needs. And then these companies can produce goods and services characterized by high positive externalities, so whose benefits goes to third subjects without making money out of these activities. But there are limitations. In particular, higher costs that they have to bear in order to guarantee a more inclusive governance. And then, as they have no profits objectives, they tend to have lesser profits and be more exposed to problems. And then they have difficulties in growing, although the cooperative where we are demonstrates the contrary, but they have difficulties in getting too big because it is difficult to govern a democratic company when it grows in size. And then they have problems. Well, they don't have financial problems in general, but they have problems in finding large amounts of capital in short times. This is a limitation. That's why they are not so much present in the manufacturing industry, because the manufacturing industry is a classical sector where you need a big quantity of money or capital in short periods, in short times. And this, unlike the service sectors, and then they are more exposed to reputational risks. And this is something that I saw also in other countries, where cooperative models can be used also for opportunistic reasons. Well, this, of course, reduces the reputation of cooperatives. And we are exactly in this situation in Italy because there is a law of 2002 which envisages the possibility of non-prevalent cooperatives models. Well, this is creating a lot of problems because cooperatives are set up which are not really cooperatives, although they have the names of cooperatives.
The literature has insisted widely on these constraints and not enough on advantages. And this is one of the reasons why the importance of cooperatives has been underrated. Let's have a look at some ideas, if I may say so, of potential action to support this industry to develop further, taking full advantage of its opportunities for the full advantage, again, of the community at large. These are just thoughts, so they're not fully fledged proposals. I'm just hinting to these ideas as that you can use during the following days. So first and foremost, much has to be done to show how specific these companies are and on what rationale do they work. As researchers, we've worked a lot, and I believe that the latest UN declarations, it wasn't the UN declarations, but the statement as presented by the Secretary proved that statistics are strong, and research is also important to make sure that this group of companies plays the role it deserves within the economy at large and within society at large. I believe the research may lead also to having better educated managers who are actually aware of the type of company that they're running, which is not a capitalistic enterprise or business, so it is to be run and managed differently. The second idea that I'd like to show you is highlighting the distinctive features in that these businesses are different from the capital enterprises, though they are not there to make a profit. They are different. The objective is to provide a service, is to meet a requirement and to pursue a common good, not to make a profit. Hence, they are also different from the profit-making companies that are encouraged to play some social role, because profit-making companies are profit-making companies first and foremost, even though they pursue a social objective. And apparently you just have to have a social objective to be part of the social economy, but I think this is grossly wrong, because the for-profit world is completely different from the non-profit-making world, from the non-for-profit world. So these enterprises are completely different. Another idea is that public policies, the European authorities as well, and not just national states, so all these entities should make sure that these enterprises are fully fledged enterprises. There are norms following which these enterprises cannot act as cooperatives in certain fields. So they are to be considered as enterprises, but they are to be considered as different enterprises. So we should rethink about the incentives, considering again the specific features of SSAEs. So for example, we cannot set a maximum size. We cannot decide what is the threshold in terms of employees or turnover and consider an enterprise as small or large, basing on that the possibility to be given grants or not, considering the for-profit enterprises, because in the case of the cooperative, it is the small farmers that gets the financing and is not the large company. So basically this should lead to changing the threshold values. And in the case of the public procurement, in European law, we read that all enterprises are to be dealt with as one and the same, but this is wrong, because SSSEs are completely different from profit-making companies. Of course, the objectives might be the same. The public administration, for example, may pursue the same objective, but they are inherently different. So I think that a new regulation should be set up so that the public administration should cooperate with SSCEs and not to be competitive with it, because competition is not the right turf where these enterprises may flourish. SSCEs should use their own resources, their funds, to promote the development of the industry they belong. They shouldn't rely on somebody else, basically. They should do that themselves. One of the major problems that we are tackling is the lack of social and health systems, with a difficulty that even fully industrialized system may find in coping with this growing demand. So if we want SSCEs to meet this request for service, then we have to be much more inclusive. So we shouldn't just talk about democratic principles. We should just more perhaps focus on inclusiveness. We might be democratic, we might have the principle of one man, one vote, but then you have to decide who casts the vote, because if those who are not interested in running the business may cast a vote, well, then democracy doesn't really occur. Is not really relative. And then a border caution is required in asking for public aid or public regulations, because oftentimes in the past a lot of public regulations wasn't good for the industry, hampered the industry, as is the case in Italy for the act that was adopted in 2002. Last but not least, a different relationship should be entered with the public sector, especially when it comes with the generation of systems or services for the public good. So again, we should shift from competitiveness to cooperation, because cooperation may bring to the fore additional advantages vis-à-vis the ones that are put forward by the public sector. In the case of competition and tenders, obviously these resources wouldn't be released. And then there is one last issue, in that financial tools are to be identified that are consistent with the non-for-profit entity of these enterprises. So speculative finance cannot be subsidizing, so cannot be supporting these businesses. I think that as an economist, I consider that this is really a danger and not an advantage. This sector, this industry may promote its own finance, as proven by the research project that has been carried out. This may perhaps prove to be common sense. Anyway, we show that calculating the solidarity index and the soundness of these businesses and the possibility for these businesses to use their own finances to pay back their debts. So, well, Italian companies that are more that are sounder are indeed the SSCEs. So finance or regular finance is not required. Actually, finance would like to provide funds to SSCEs, but I don't think that they are should be welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Carlo Borzaga, for this very inspiring presentation, and for this overview of the SSC economy, the overview of the SSC organization, the specificities of these different organizations, the advantages of these organizations, but also the limits, and also for providing some elements of recommendations to promote the importance of, or to promote the development of the SSC organizations. We will have a chance to react and to contribute to this keynote address, but after Bénédicte Fontenot's address. So I would like to invite Bénédicte to come and share with us your insights and your keynotes that will build actually on what Professor Carlos Borzaga just said, and will explore also how SSE organizations can contribute to the future of work debates. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Merci Valérie et bonjour à...
Grazie Valerie, buon pomeriggio. Thank you Valerie, thank you very much to you all. It is an honor for me to take the floor. Faced with a team of researchers, as invited or upon the request by the ILO, we developed a study analyzing the contribution from social and solidarity economy. I subdivided my presentation in three. I'm going to go back to what the Secretariat of the ILO refers to as the future of employment or labor. Then I'll be presenting you the results of this study. And to conclude, I'll talk about what is at stake with reference to the social solidarity economy and the obstacles it should overcome to take up the economic challenge of the present times. I'll be trying to point out to the main themes to find an answer to the most emerging questions. We've celebrated the 100th anniversary in 2014 and 2014. We've identified the four macro trends affecting the world of labor. First of all, there is the environmental trends that translate into production methods that should consider climate change and the risks that are connected to the nuclear energy, to the chemical industry, and then the demographic trends that have an impact on the need to create jobs for young people. Then there's the problem of economic trends and economic trends, as I was saying, that show greater differences between the north and south of the world. Then there's the technology trends. With the emergence of the gig economy, the new forms of consumption that lead to certain individuals working upon request of individuals who perceive one single objective. And then we should look at the future of labor. We should question the existence of the existing models, which translates into a lot of uncertainties that could be subdivided in these four questions. A question is raised on the meaning and function of labor in our societies. This is an existential question. How do we define labor in the 21st century? What are our ambitions, both individually and collectively, when it comes to labor, employment, and in particular for young people? What are the expectations of young people? Then the second question reads as follows. Where from will jobs come? What will they look like? Will we all be software programmers in the near future? What is going to be the training for young people? So the young people who were born in the 1990s of the past century, are they all going to be software programmers? And what are going to be the organizational forms of labor and production? This is the third question. labor jobs is going to be distributed without equality, both in terms of geography and gender. And to conclude, the fourth question, what is the governance of labor? What are the roles that the trade unions may play? And what is the role of employees? So these are the four main questions of our study. We carried out a study on social solidarity economy. We tried to relate it to the decision maker in the political circles, and we wanted to show that social solidarity economy can come up with a tangible, a practical reply to these questions and uncertainties.
Alors, quelle est cette contribution de l'économie sociale et...
So what is the contribution of SSEs to the labor market? Well, first of all, it should give meaning to economic activities thanks to its social objectives. SSEs are defined based on the focus on services and goods, which are not aimed at generating profits, but the aim is that of making available goods and services to communities in order to respond to the needs of communities. And how do you do that? You do that by ensuring the existence of an economic and social context, which is the basis for these companies. Well, institutions have been set up, for example, WIR or the rural Philippine cooperatives. Well, these are institutions which have been set up and which implement all these notions. And then there is the social sector, which is taking up an increasing role in the society. And it's important to guarantee quality and accessibility to services, to social services. And there are institutions, for example, the Fédération Maison Médicale, which offer access to services to everybody. And this, for example, has been negotiated with the welfare system in Belgium. So thanks to this method, it is possible to have teams which work in a non-hierarchical way. And then it's important to speak about the governance and the management of labor. This is a topic which crosses all sectors, including SSEs, where there is a subordinate relationship between employers and workers. And this is part of solidarity-based economy. So we speak about communities, we speak about users who are the beneficiaries of solidarity economy. Well, participation has different forms, different expressions. There are SSEOs which adopt, for example, decentralized decision-making processes, and groups of workers thanks to this, can better understand the organization, the processing cycles, and all that is included in rules and regulations, and produces better working methods. by nature, SSEs create labor, create jobs and economic activities. And its force, its strength is that of creating jobs for the advantages, for the advantage and for the benefit of employers and of the society. And all that in a transition towards a different economy, informal economy. SSEs help maintain and keep jobs, as was the case, for example, in Argentina and in other countries in the world. SSEs help create working projects which are in line with the needs and desires of workers. And SSEs are a fundamental actor in the case of vulnerable situations. Very often, social and solidarity economy enterprises have helped accompany people in difficulty and have supported workers, for example, who have been laid off. And SSEs can create jobs, and they give an extra value, they give an added value, more meaning for the people involved and the society as a whole. And SSEs contribute in various ways to social innovation, and we will have the opportunity to focus on that in the next few days. So what is very important for SSEs is the organization of labor. I'm thinking, for example, at of the Federation of Fruit Growers or Vegetable Growers in Senegal, but other situations also in other parts of the world. And then SSEs also react to the need for social protection of workers. And then there is the example of Fondation created in Quebec, which uses resources to finance enterprises so that enterprises can be involved in the social community. SSEs can have a role also in terms of public policies and a role in the dialogue with the for-profit private sector. SSEs have devised, for example, welfare policies for people who did not have access to public welfare policies. And these policies are based on the mutuality role of social enterprises. And the mutuality companies have a role also at the level of public policies. In a way or another, social economy has always been in relation or in competition with the for-profit private sector. But the social economy has opened a dialogue with the private sector, in particular in the area of, for example, social funds. And the result of this dialogue is far from being achieved, but these public-private finance methods may represent a new opportunity for a discussion involving different stakeholders and actors. And these SSEs can also, we know, participate in tenders. Of course, the role of SSEs is important because it is based on the principle of participation and inclusion and distribution of profits. We believe that this can be a source of inspiration for other actors of the economy and of the society. And this added value could have an impact also beyond its sector. Indeed, SSEs challenge new or face new challenges. For example, one challenge is related to the topic of this conference, that is the quality and sustainability of employment within SSEs, which give an important contribution to employment, both to the private sector and the public sector. We know that all social and solidarity enterprises sometimes do not offer acceptable working conditions, and then not in all such organizations there is sufficient attention to the working conditions and to the quality of work. And then SSEs sometimes cannot guarantee the long-term sustainability of jobs. And this is due to a lack of public funds, but also because they have to compete with for-profit companies. And this, of course, is a disadvantage for workers. So we should consider that the quality of work depends on the resources that can be generated in the economic market. In terms of low-income countries, SSEs should require and should aim at sustainable working conditions. And then we know that thanks to participatory practices, social and solidarity economy sometimes reinvents social relations within companies. But this is not always the case, because in many enterprises there is still a model of subordination of workers. So that's why we need to open a dialogue, in particular, but not exclusively, with trade unions. SSEs have gained a lot recently in terms of consistency and efficacy, and trade unions will be able to draw inspiration from the models exhibited by SSEs. And then there is another challenge, which is the inconsistency of public policies. In the world, there are public policies which are in favor of SSEs, And very often the supply of services are delegated to mutuality companies or to social enterprises, but there are still public policies made by the same governance which create conditions where SSEs cannot work well. For example, there are public policies which apply a deregulation of formal economy, also with reference to the trading of goods and services. Now, what are the lines or the paths to take? Well, we have to look at the actors of SSEs and decision makers in order to have a greater dialogue. And then we need to work more on communication campaigns which hint at the inconsistency of public policies. And there is then the issue of the environment. This is something urgent. There are SSEs which are very much committed to environmental protection. It's mainly cooperatives which work in the area of renewable energy. But their role is very much limited. So public politics can have an important role and can support SSEs so that they can have a more significant role in the environmental transition. In conclusion, the SSEs should create a common movement with environmental movements because this collaboration could benefit the social and solidarity enterprises and SSEs can certainly share with environmental movements their expertise and their skills. And I'm sure that during this conference we will focus more on all these issues. So I'd like to take this opportunity to share with all these comments that we've made. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benedict. You can have a seat, Mr. Borsago. Thank you very much for these two great keynote addresses, very inspiring, giving already some recommendation and some challenges to address, but also some ideas of recommendations. I would like to open the floor for contributions, reflections, questions you may have to either Benedict or Professor Carlo. The floor is yours. Yes, please. Do we have another mic, Alessia? This one for now, please.
My name is Benjamin Quinones from the Philippines. My question is to both the speakers. The presentation has focused on the organization. We have created performance indicators to indicate which one is SSE organization and not SSE. But we have probably missed the question, what kind of economy are these organizations creating? What are the indicators of this economy? Because indicators of performance are already created and established for cooperatives. Now, in Asia, you have social enterprises. That's why we have social enterprise forum and so forth and so on, because the indicators are also focusing on the organization. When I talk to cooperatives and I ask them, okay, you're good, your performance is good, but what kind of economy are you creating? They cannot answer this because there are no indicators. But you have mentioned indicators that can be applied. For example, when you talk of economy, I'm an economist, you talk about distribution of wealth. What is the difference in ECC economy and non-ECC economy in so far as distribution of wealth? We have to have indicators that you have mentioned this, but you know, I think we will miss a lot if, for example, we just focus on the organization and we will not define the economy that ECC is supposed to create. So I have been involved, for example, in creating indicators for microfinance institutions. Very good. They were adopted. They will find out that they are very efficient microfinance institutions after a while, 5 years, 10 years later. Now we talk about mission drift. Why? Because we have not talked about the kind of economy that these organizations are supposed to create. So this is my submission. Is there a way by which this conference can talk about this? Tomorrow I will present some ideas, but very simple ideas. And redistribution is one, durability or the quality and sustainability of labor or jobs is another one. But there are many indicators that will come up in order to define that vision of SSE. So this is my question. Maybe you can already come up with some indicators to help us, visualize where are we really leading to with this kind of organizations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Would you like to reflect?
In English, the problem of the indicator, the main problem is that before to define the indicators, we must exactly know what are the main characteristics of the organization. For instance, we already see the application of indicators which are not consistent with the nature of this organization. You are an economist. If you apply, for instance, a ROI or ROE indicator, which is is a normal indicator, there are researches in Italy provided by important research institutions which apply ROI and ROE to agricultural cooperatives. And they don't realize that cooperatives don't maximize profit. Agricultural cooperatives maximize costs because they maximize the revenue of the farmers, the members, which are part of the cost of the cooperative. But they are still using these indicators. And obviously, indicators like this are the demonstrations that this organization don't work. They are inefficient, obviously, because they have a completely different aim, and they have different costs. So, what matters is we don't have a clear idea about the main characteristics of this organization, and this creates problems in defining the indicators. We are still using indicators which are taken from the mainstream economics, which are not. Most of them are not consistent with the nature of this organization.
But
so,
you're still not defining the economy.
Excuse me?
You're still not defining what is SSE.
Yes.
You're defining what is SSE organization. This is what my question is. How do you define SSE?
But you can, for instance, you can define. You can use indicator like the distribution of the value added among different factors, and you can show how these organizations are distributive or not, how they distribute value. This can be used as an indicator to compare this organization with similar with for-profit companies or operating in the same sectors. No? I think there is a huge emphasis on impact without knowing what type of impact we want to measure. This is my problem. My problem in this moment, in the debate we have about impact is that people don't know what they want to measure. They simply want to measure. But what are the main indicators? We don't need hundreds of indicators. We need few indicators. But if the indicators are a tool we can use for understanding the performance of the company. But if we use the wrong indicators because we didn't understand the nature of the organization, we don't do a good job. This is my feeling. Most of these indicators are not good for most of the indicators used are not good indicators.
Thank you. Bénédicte, would you like...
Oui, merci Benjamin.
Thank you very much for your question, but I'm going to answer another part of your question. You referred to the players of SSEs and their vision of economy. I'm going to make a very specific example. I'm going to look at the reform of social protection systems, especially in low-income countries. What we are witnessed with is that these social protection systems are being changed and amended and reformed, and new tools are going to be developed so that there's going to be one for the poor, one tool is going to provide aid, one tool is going to provide a specific support for workers, and then there are going to be also support tools for the workers in the informal economy. And in certain countries, these are often used mutual support, and these workers may be happy with that because they didn't enjoy any social protection so far. But we should be better focused on social protection. We should put together a set of mechanisms that are interrelated. There's no need to have isolated tools for different groups of workers. I think that all the workers of the social and solidarity economy should be granted social protection. And I believe that proposals should be made to get to a general system of social protection with the main objective in mind to distribute wealth. So these tools, these devices might be different, but the one objective that should be perceived is that of wealth distribution. These tools, therefore, should enable the local community to be empowered. So if the players of the social economy, solidarity economy don't do that, I think that they miss the target. The main players of social and solidarity economy should grant social protection, should involve the state, and the additional players to grant social protection. That certainly is going to be the main objective.
Protection example. Yes, I can see a question over there.
If I may, maybe
yes,
we
please.
can pick a couple of questions from the audience and then we can report them back. So, first question.
David Thompson from Australia, or more particularly Tasmania. Just a couple of points. The first is measuring impact. It's a very difficult thing to do, especially when we're talking about human well-being and disadvantaged citizens, needy citizens. And I think a very difficult thing for practitioners of the dismal science to come to grips with. But there are some dimensions of human well-being that can't be measured. And we need to take great care in setting up measurement frameworks which organisations will chase because measurement frameworks are the measure of success or not. The other point I wanted to make is to support the proposition that there is a need for better regulation of the social economy and the social solidarity economy, because I can see, and I'm sure other people in the audience can see, lots of for-profit sharks deciding they want to swim in the SSE ocean. I attended a meeting of one of the most rapacious of Australia's merchant banks called Macquarie Bank. It owns quite a few Italian airports, I think. And you could see these arch capitalists, they call it the millionaires factory, seeing the SSE sector as a new asset class they could pillage. And I think there's a lot of people extolling the benefits of public-private arrangements like social impact bonds, which almost no one can understand. But we must never forget where the private sector is involved, they're going to extract a profit. And that's going to be their motivation. But back to my earlier point, I think we owe it to the principled and right practitioners and organisations in the social solidarity economy to make sure better regulation occurs now rather than later, when reputational risk could bring about significant damage. So.
Thank you. We can just quickly go through the other side of the room.
Hi everyone, my name is Leandro Moraes from Brazil. Thank you for both presentations, for both speakers, and I'd like to ask you, Professor Bozaga and Benedict, that in general terms, because maybe we have more time after to discuss, what are the main holes and challenges for the social and solidarity economy in a technological era?
Thank you. Would you like to, who would like to take the questions first? Benedict?
Thank you, Leandro. Well, I believe that there could be different points of view to answer your question. Actually, I'm no expert with technology, but let me go back to your question, perhaps to say something slightly different. There's something that I'd like to specify. The social and solidarity economy can make the difference when it comes to the use of technology. In my presentation, I pointed out to the fact that technology devices, software, apps, and the like are oftentimes being used to connect to producers, users, manufacturers, and the physical intermediaries, the human intermediaries, oftentimes are people that work on a commission. We know how these services work because oftentimes these services are being provided by people that we term as self-employed, but as a matter of fact, these people work upon a specific commission with no social protection, with no working contract. The players of social and solidarity economy are trying to do something differently, and they'd like their people who they work with to be granted some social protection. This is a real need which is being perceived because they're faced with a risk of not granting any social protection to these workers that are again granted no protection. So there's a risk where labor actually is worsened by the lack of regulations, by the lack of social protection. So because oftentimes these people are not entrepreneurs, are not employees, and solutions are to be found for them to be protected, because in a way they cannot be labeled as either or. So they are in something in between, yet they should be protected, their salary should be protected. And I believe the social solidarity economy should play a role there, trying to avoid contributing to the lowering of standards for these workers. As a matter of fact, the social solidarity economy should make sure that these workers fully enjoy the rights of any worker. The rights that now are granted to employees.
Osservazione. Sono molto d'accordo.
Well, I agree on both things that you said. In terms of the impact, I think that the emphasis laid on the impact presents two dangers. The first is that of opening the way to for-profit companies to do social washing, that is, to appear as social but not be social. I'm convinced that we should maintain the difference between social enterprises and for-profit companies. And then the second danger is that if we insist too much on the impact, above all in the case of policies favorable to companies which can demonstrate impact, well, we may end up in promoting and driving companies to do things only when it is possible to measure the impact. This has already been the case. So to do activities only when I can measure the impact and see, look, I've done this, I have this impact, give me those supports. So we need to reflect upon political measures which are such that the use of social companies or the exploitation of social companies is not so convenient in the end or cost effective. I think that in the end we should introduce the asset lock, that is a constraint on the use of assets. Of course, you can distribute the profits, but not the assets. So the company should not be able to resell its assets. I'll make a small example. Now, what about this winery? Can it be worth some hundreds millions euros? Well, okay. If the members of this cooperative tomorrow decide to sell it in Italy, they cannot do that because there is this asset lock provision. They cannot receive €1 for the assets. And this makes speculations difficult. The problem is that the asset lock provision is not present in many countries. Well, all the documents of SSEs say we do not distribute the profits, but this asset lock is present only in few countries. In some countries, there is the lock on reserves, but not on assets. So either SSEs equip themselves and ask for more stringent measures, or I agree with you. Because we see that in Italy with so-called false cooperatives, there has been a boom of cooperatives which do not pay taxes, which do not pay social contributions, and then they disappear. And this is allowed by the law. And then a comment about the second question. I think that there are interesting prospects coming from new technologies. I think that one of the areas of growth of SSEs is in the area of services for the community, services for people, and technologies can be very useful. Of course, we would need a regulation of these technologies. For example, the whole issue of personal data and the use made by social media of personal data. Well, personal data is not a private good. And Mazzucato is right when she says that the profits are made on a public good. So we would need a very stringent regulation in favor of social enterprises where people agree that data is made available for the benefit of the community. But certainly social networks can be very useful to guarantee the matching between supply and demand, and above all in a cooperative context.
For your responses. We have time for one more question. So I can see one question over there. Please.
Merci. Bonsoir. Je vous remercie.
Good evening. Thank you. I come from Morocco, and this is my question. I noted that when we speak about SSE, we use both reason and emotion. Many of us support these values. Well, the future of solidarity and social economy depends on scientific data where there is no role for emotions. And this drives me back to indicators. Do you have indicators that measure the scientific side of the social economy?
Je ne sais pas si c'est une question qui amène une...
Well, I don't know. It's not so easy to answer. I am a researcher. I work in a scientific institute, but science doesn't solve everything, luckily enough. But certainly, in the case of SSE, we make reference to ideals, to visions, and sometimes the difference with the capital economy is that we give for granted that it is an ideal, a vision, that is to look at a different form of economy. I don't know if we can do without emotions. I don't know. It's a bit dangerous because this may do harm because, of course, we need to have these values which then turn into the implementation of these ideas. Of course, vision is not enough, but you know, ideals cannot be limited or they do not boil down just to indicators. Solidarity and social economy acknowledges that not everything can be translated into indicators, and the use of these indicators should not, of course, be top-down. So the application of indicators should be based on observing what the social and economy and solidarity economy does.
Sì, Ad esempio tutta la ricerca che è stata fatta sulle motivazioni al lavoro, sulla soddisfazione dei lavoratori, sulle ragioni per cui i lavoratori hanno diverso attaccamento all'impresa a secondo del tipo di impresa. Queste sono ricerche, sono ricerche che hanno ormai una valenza internazionale, non sono dati raccolti in maniera sistematica ancora, potrebbero esserlo attraverso le famose multiscopo, fare anche indicatori di questo.
But it is possible to develop such indicators, certified also by psychologists, questions that have been validated by several investigations. For example, we have discovered a very interesting thing, that workers are satisfied when they feel or perceive that the organization for which they work treat them in an equal and fair way. And fairness is also an emotional thing. So in our statistical models, when we introduce perceived fairness, well, that included all nuances of satisfaction. And so well, those data related to cooperatives, and cooperatives treated workers in a fairer way, or rather workers perceived that they were treated in a fairer way as compared to for-profit organizations and public workers, and that generated more satisfaction and as a consequence also more productivity, and this despite the fact that the wage was lower. But workers had this emotional sort of remuneration. So these are things that you can measure. And there are many research works undergoing. Not all research works have the same results, but let's say that, well, for example, when you speak about quality of work, we look at the types of agreements, whether they are full-time or not. You look at the wage, the salary, and you never look at the relationship between the worker and the enterprise. Something that can be done. It's not impossible.
Thank you very much, Benedict and Carlo. I'm sorry we won't have more time to ask more questions, but we have another program for the evening, so bear with me. Great thanks to both speakers. I think it was a great session to highlight the hot topics, actually, with regards to the SSE organizations, and also this very fast changing world of work. So thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you very much for the contributions and the different questions that rose. Very interesting themes that we will explore in the coming days. So I would like us to give a big round of applause for our two speakers. And I will let Alessia tell us more for the rest of the evening, right?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. So, as Valerie said, tomorrow morning, as of 9, we will gather again here in Sala del Cavo to continue diving into the SSE key trends and drivers. So there will be another plenary, and hopefully there will be another opportunity for digging deeper into the debate. We know that now there is a visit that is expecting us. And I'm going to ask Gloria from the organizing committee if she can give us some practical details about how this is going to happen and how long does it last and so on. So what are the next steps for us? So I will ask Gloria to join us on stage, and thank you again, Benedict and Carlo, for paving the way for the debate.
Thank you all. I will speak in Italian just to be sure to communicate with you all the correct information.
So tomorrow morning, There's going to be a meeting point where the bus will be waiting for you to take you here. The address is written down on the program. Via Lungardige Monte Grappa. This is the address where the bus will meet you. We don't know exactly where your bus is, but in some of your hotel, there's going to be somebody from the staff waiting for you at 7:45, taking you to the meeting point at 8:00 a.m. So maybe if you want to tell us what your hotel is, we know about Buon Consiglio, Everest, Accademia, Trento. These are the hotels that are certainly going to see our staff present to wait for you. But if there is any other hotel where you're staying, please let us know so that you can send somebody to meet you. Then probably you might not wish to spend the night with us and you want to go back. Please let us know so that we can organize the bus at best. Another important piece of information. Have you registered for your parallel sessions? If not, please do so now. We'll be waiting for you at the couch at the back of the hall because for organizational reasons, we need to know ahead of time which parallel session you're more interested in. So those of you who haven't registered for parallel sessions, please do so.